She was sitting alone in one of the most expensive restaurants in Chicago, snow pressing silently against the tall glass windows, an empty chair across from her. 43 minutes gone. And then a quiet voice from the next table said something she never expected. "Your date didn't show up either." Huh. He didn't ask it like a question. He said it like a man who already knew the answer, because he was living the exact same thing, just one table over. 2 strangers, 2 no-shows, 1 snowstorm. She had built an empire worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He drove a truck from 2009 and built furniture with his bare hands. They had absolutely nothing in common. And yet, that one quiet sentence started something that would completely unravel the life she thought she'd been building. What she didn't know yet, sitting in that restaurant with her pride quietly dissolving, was that this stranger was about to become the most important person she'd ever meet. But she almost walked out before she found that out. Let me take you back to who Victoria Hale actually was before that night. On paper, she was extraordinary. CEO of Hale Dynamics, a tech and infrastructure company her father had started out of a garage in suburban Chicago. He'd taught her to read blueprints before she could ride a bike. When he died, she took what he'd built, a small, struggling company with 11 employees, and turned it into something that spanned 11 countries and employed 8,000 people. She was 41. She had a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the entire city. She had a wine collection worth more than most cars. She had a jet, a board, and a reputation for being the most composed person in any room. She also ate dinner alone every single night. That detail is important, because the dinner, the silence of it, the echo of an expensive apartment with no one in it, was the thing that finally broke through her armor. Her assistant, Margaret, had been watching her boss quietly disappear into work for years, so she did something bold. She set Victoria up on a blind date, a real one, not a networking dinner dressed up as romance, a proper, anonymous, strangers meeting for the first time blind date. Victoria had agreed because saying no would have meant admitting something she wasn't and ready to admit, that she had built this entire life and somewhere along the way completely forgotten to actually live it. She made the reservation under a fake name, Anna Mitchell. She wore jeans, a plain sweater, her father's old watch, nothing that said CEO, nothing that said Victoria Hale. She wanted to be a normal woman, just for one night, just to see what that felt like. The man never showed. 43 minutes she sat there, watching the door, watching waiters give her the soft, sympathetic look that people give you when they know something you're still pretending isn't way. No. And then, from the table beside her, a quiet voice. "I've checked my phone 19 times in the last hour. At some point, you'd think I'd accept she's not coming." She almost didn't respond. Victoria Hale did not make small talk with strangers in restaurants. Victoria Hale was controlled, professional, always a step ahead. But she was tired. She was 43 minutes lonely, and something in his voice sounded exactly like how she felt. She turned around, but she had no idea how much that one small turn would change everything. His name was Daniel. He said it simply, offering his hand across the aisle between their tables. No last name, no title, just Daniel. His handshake was firm and calloused, the kind of handshake that came from actual work, not from practicing confident greetings in MBA programs. She hesitated for only a second. "Anna," she said. He didn't flinch, didn't flirt, didn't try to impress her. He just said, with the kind of calm honesty that felt almost reckless in a room full of people, performing for each other, "We've already been stood up, already sitting in an overpriced restaurant neither of us probably wanted to be in, already feeling like idiots. Might as well feel like idiots together. At least then we can split an appetizer." Something shifted in her chest, something small but definite, like the first crack in ice that's been frozen too long. They pushed their tables together, and that was the moment, that small, ridiculous, impulsive decision to push 2 restaurant tables together, that started the unraveling of every wall Victoria Hale had spent 20 years carefully building. They talked, not the way people talk at networking events or first dates where everyone is performing a curated version of themselves. They talked honestly, painfully honestly. She told him she was there because her assistant thought she needed to engage with life outside the office. He told her he was there because his 8-year-old son had asked him, point blank, with the devastating directness that only children have. "Dad, are you lonely?" 8-year-olds shouldn't have to worry about their dads being lonely, he said. She asked him if he was. "Yeah," he said. Just that. No performance, no qualification. Just yeah. She asked herself the same question for the first time in years, and got the same answer. You have to understand. Victoria had not let herself be vulnerable in so long she'd almost forgotten what it felt like. She had a system. Work fills the time. Work fills the silence. Work fills the space where a life is supposed to be. It was a perfect system. It was also completely hollow. And sitting across from this quiet stranger in a coat that had seen better days, being honest for 45 minutes, it cracked the system open. They ordered soup. They ate in comfortable silence while snow piled up against the windows. They paid separately when it was over, because Daniel insisted, and something about that small act of dignity, refusing to let her pay, not making it complicated, told her something important about who he was. In the doorway, before they stepped out into the cold, he broke their own ground rule. "Can I have your number?" Her heart did something it hadn't done in years. That night, she made a decision that would change everything. 3 days later, they met at a coffee shop called Winter Grind. Mismatched furniture, chipped mugs, a table that wobbled no matter which leg you tried to stabilize. Nothing like the restaurants Victoria Hale normally occupied. It was perfect. She asked him to tell her something true. He looked at his hands for a long moment. Then he told her. His wife had died 7 years ago. Icy roads. A drive home from her sister's house. She didn't make it. He spent the first 3 years angry. Angry at her for leaving. Angry at himself for not driving her. Angry at their son Liam. God, this one nearly destroyed him to admit. Angry at Liam for looking so much like her. For smiling like her. Because some days he could barely stand to see that smile. "I'm not angry anymore," he said quietly. "But I don't know if what I feel now is better or worse." The coffee shop hummed around them. A mug shattered behind the counter. Nobody reacted. Victoria felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. Not for herself. For the years she'd spent thinking she was the one with the hard life because she worked too much and ate dinner alone. This man had carried something genuinely devastating, and he was still standing, still raising his son, still sitting across from a stranger in a mismatched coffee shop, trying again. She told him her truth then. She said she'd built a company that employed 8,000 people across 11 countries. She said she was good at it, really good at it. And then she said the thing she'd never said out loud before. "Every night I go home to an apartment that costs more than most people's houses, and I eat dinner alone, and I wonder if this is what winning is supposed to feel like." He reached across the wobbly table and took her hand. "I work with wood," he said. "I build furniture. I go home to a house that needs a new roof. I make dinner for a kid who's growing up too fast. And I wonder if I'm enough." 2 people, 2 completely different worlds, both asking the same question, both terrifyingly alone. I realized then, no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. What happened next wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was slow and quiet and careful, the way real things grow. They texted. Not every hour. Not in bursts of infatuation. Consistently. Reliably. The way you text someone when you're genuinely interested in who they are, rather than the impression you're making. Liam, Daniel's 8-year-old, had sent her a crayon drawing. A blue T-Rex standing next to a person. The person was labeled AA. The dinosaur was labeled me. She laughed out loud in her penthouse for the first time in years. She and Daniel talked on the phone. Real calls. Not texts. And she told him things she hadn't told anyone. About her father. About the blueprint she still kept framed in her office. About how exhausting it was to always be the person in the room who everyone was watching. He told her he'd built a wall after his wife died. Said it was to protect Liam. Said it was for stability. But really, and he was honest about this, really it was because if he never let anyone in, he'd never have to lose anyone again. She understood that so completely it frightened her. "Mine's made of work," she said. "Meetings, deals, decisions that affect thousands of people. If I'm always busy, I never have to acknowledge that I'm alone." Week by week, quietly, they were dismantling those walls together. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Brick by brick. He showed her a photo of a wooden box he'd built for Liam's Legos. Dovetail joints. Smooth finish. And she told him it was beautiful. Practical and beautiful. She texted. "Same could be said about you," he replied. She saved that message. They found an oak tree in a small park on the north side, the kind of neighborhood where people still shoveled their neighbors' driveways. It became their place. They met there 4 times in 2 weeks. They walked and talked and sat on a cold metal bench and watched the city glow in the distance. She started to feel something she hadn't felt in so long she'd almost forgotten the name for it. Hope. And they had no idea what was coming to test it. The crisis came on a Tuesday. Margaret walked into Victoria's office without knocking, and Margaret never walked in without knocking. The Singapore deal. $47 million. 300 jobs. 18 months of negotiations. Their primary contact, Chen, old school, formal, traditional, had issued an ultimatum. Victoria Hale, in person by Thursday. Non-negotiable. The jet could be ready by tonight. She'd need to stay at least a week, maybe 2. Liam's art show was Friday. Victoria sat at her desk for 15 minutes without moving after Margaret left. Phone in her hand, not dialing. Everything she had built on one side of a scale. Everything she was beginning to build with Daniel and Liam on the other. She called Daniel. I have to go to Singapore, she said. Silence. That's Liam's art show, he said. I know. More silence. She could hear him breathing, could picture him standing in his workshop, sawdust on his hands, trying to process what she was really saying. This is what your life is like, isn't it? He finally said. Last-minute trips, deals that can't wait, choosing work over everything else. It's not a choice. It's always a choice, Victoria. The words hit hard, because they were true. He told her he was scared, that he'd let her in because he finally thought, maybe he could have something more than just survival. But he couldn't do it if every time something important came up, she disappeared. He'd watched his wife die. He'd spent 7 years making sure Liam's life was stable and safe. He could not pour that into someone who would keep choosing boardrooms. I'm not disappearing. It's one trip. It's never just one trip. Victoria felt tears she refused to let fall. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat in her penthouse and ran the numbers. Not the financial ones. The other ones. 18 months of work. 300 jobs. 1 Friday. 1 8-year-old boy. 1 man who built furniture and raised his son and told her the truth, even when it cost him something. At 3:00 a.m., she called her head of Asian operations. Laura, I need you to go to Singapore instead of me. She spent 12 hours the next day preparing Laura completely. Then she called Chen directly. Miss Hale requested you personally, he said, stiff with formality. I understand, she told him. And I'm trusting you with someone more valuable than me. Laura built this deal. She knows every detail. She has full authority. This is very unusual. I'm asking you to trust my judgment, Victoria said. The same judgment that's made Hale Dynamics a reliable partner for a decade. A long pause. We will see, Chen said finally. She hung up, and then the room went completely silent. Margaret appeared in the doorway, staring. You really did it. I did. The board is going to lose their minds. Probably. And you're okay with that? Victoria looked out the window at the city below. Thousands of lives moving, thousands of choices being made. She thought about a small boy drawing crayon dinosaurs, about a man standing under an oak tree saying, survival is enough, you just have to keep growing. I'm okay with knowing I tried to do both, she said. Friday came with clear skies for the first time in weeks. She arrived at the elementary school 20 minutes early. The gymnasium was decorated with children's artwork, bright, messy, honest in the way that only children's art can be. She found Liam's section. 3 drawings on the wall. A T-Rex. A house with a sagging porch. And a third one. 3 people standing under a tree. A tall man. A small boy. A woman with long hair. Above them, the beginning of something that looked like a treehouse. The title written carefully in crayon. My Family. Victoria stood there for a long time before Daniel appeared beside her. He finished it yesterday, Daniel said quietly. We're not, she started. I mean, we haven't. He sees what he sees. Daniel took her hand. Is he wrong? She looked at the drawing, at this hopeful, honest picture of something that didn't exist yet, but could. No, she said quietly. He's not wrong. Liam ran up in his art class apron and hugged her, brief and tight and completely unguarded, the way kids hug before the world teaches them to be careful. I'm glad you're here, he said. Me too. The Singapore deal closed 2 weeks later. Laura negotiated it perfectly. The treehouse got built that spring. The Parks Department approved it. Community structure. Contractor. Daniel Morrison. Some things are worth building slow, and some doors have to close completely before you realize you were standing in front of the right one the whole time.